Good morning everyone, thank you for coming on such short notice. First of all, I have to remind you all that this session is classified top secret, and its content should not be disclosed to anyone outside of this room. The faculty has recently come into possession of certain sensitive materials belonging to the Federal Bureau of Control. They've had a pretty major incident lately and want to back up all their files. As such, we've gotten to look over and rate some, let's say, interesting items, and I've actually been authorized to go over some of them with you. But I get the impression that they want to use this class as some form of recruitment, so don't be too alarmed if at some point you get approached by people in suits and dark glasses. So the Federal Bureau of Control is a covert department of the US government which specializes in the storage and classification of so-called paranatural items, as well as the containment and cleanup of incidents the items may be the cause or result of. Often what they define as altered world events, or AWEs, involve what can only be described as alternate realities crossing onto our own, and in fact their headquarters, itself an anomalous so-called place of power, is riddled with thresholds intersecting and allowing travel to other dimensions. Basically, it makes what we do here look like amateur hour, and their operation is only really comparable to that of the SCP Foundation, but I'm not even going to think about what kind of relationship the FBC has with them. At this time, the Bureau has a number of names for the weird and wonderful things they come across. These range from places of power through thresholds to altered world events, but all we're really interested in for the moment are the items they contain. Generally, these artifacts are split into two categories, which are not always clean cut or well understood. Either they didn't provide us enough detail, or even they aren't too sure about it. What we do know is that the Bureau refers to items with any sort of supernatural capabilities as altered items, which are then catalogued in order of their discovery. Some altered items are considered more powerful than others, however, and are categorized into their own group, so-called objects of power. It would appear that typically something is classified as an object of power as opposed to an altered item when the person with their own supernatural affinity, called a para-utilitarian, is able to absorb the power of an object and use it as their own. A prime example of a para-utilitarian is the current director of the FBC, Jesse Faden, who currently holds the power of several OOPs. Due to the way their cataloging works, it has been known for items previously classified as AIs to be recategorized as OOPs, if research reveals they meet the requirements. Items catalogued by the FCP, be they AIs or OOPs, are usually assigned one of 5 subclassifications, dependent on their abilities or effects. The first and by far most prevalent class is KE, which is assigned to objects that have a kinetic impact on the surrounding world, or in some way capable of self-locomotion. PE class items are seen to have some sort of mental impact on anyone who approaches them, ranging from influencing them to act or feel a certain way, to implanting an idea within their mind. The AE class seems to relate to any object which has the capability to vocalize or produce a sound when it logically shouldn't. The final well-defined category is the BE class, which likely relates to any kind of biological impact such as the spreading of a pathogen or alteration of organic matter. The final class is UE, which is currently linked to several items with a range of abilities, indicating that this is some form of placeholder class for items with yet unknown or unresearched effects, which will be reclassified more appropriately at a later date. Furthermore, we can see that several altered items exhibit characteristics of multiple classes, so it can only be assumed that the classification will be determined by the item's dominant effects. So I realise this was pretty different to our usual lectures, and hopefully when we start looking at the myriad of altered items and objects of power the FBC holds, we can do it in a more traditional fashion. Either way, please remember that information shared in this session is classified, but please don't let that stop you from subscribing for more course content and becoming a patron on Patreon to make sure I won't always be reliant on peddling top secret information for a living. Anyway, have a great week everyone, and please don't touch any suspicious looking glowing objects.